Hello, and welcome to Starry Storytime, a gentle, soothing space where evening stories and soft whispers guide you into a peaceful night's rest. Tonight, we're offering another relaxing tale designed to help ease your mind and lead you toward a comforting slumber. Before we begin, let's take a moment to prepare our bodies and minds for deep rest. Find a comfortable position, and with each slow inhale and soft exhale, let any worries from the day quietly slip away. It can be challenging to step away from the day's hustle, especially when it's time to sleep. Yet remember, the less we worry about falling asleep, the easier it becomes for our minds to let go of lingering tension. Allow the gentle rhythm of your breath to wash away any remaining concerns, and let tonight's story guide you into serenity. Now, settle in and let the soothing aura of Starry Storytime surround you. May you enjoy this story and drift into a tranquil, restorative night's sleep. An epoch of frost had claimed the kingdom, arriving without warning and refusing departure. Spring became a forgotten legend, a half-believed myth whispered by the dwindling elders. Generations bloomed and withered under this unending white mantle, children maturing into adults whose skin had never known the kiss of summer sun, whose eyes had never witnessed the riotous green of a thawed world. For them, life unfolded beneath skies, painted in the ephemeral pastels of twilight, not the vibrant hues of vanished blossoms. Verdancy was solely the deep, unchanging shade of the pine and fir. All else lay draped in immutable white, though grandparents spun tales of emerald hills rolling beneath azure skies, of sun-drenched wildflowers and rivers like liquid crystal. These were mere phantoms, impossible to grasp, textures and colors beyond imagining. Why this glacial stasis had begun remained shrouded in conjecture. Yet one fact stood undeniable. Concurrent with winter's entrenchment, a colossal spire of ice had pierced the kingdom's heartland. Sheer, slick, utterly unassailable. It became known only as the Shard, the glass peak. Rumor, persistent as the cold, insisted the ominous monolith was the handiwork of a sorcerer who, slighted by the king, had condemned the monarch and his daughter to an eternal, frozen exile upon its summit. Countless fireside sagas chronicled the fates of those who dared the ascent, each bearing some token intended to win the sequestered princess's favor. But the climb proved a treacherous folly, the peak jealously guarded, legend claimed, by an immense, terrifying avian sentinel. Every aspirant, knight or farmer, met the same end, a long, ignominious slide back to the mountain's base. Even those equipped with axes or picks, seeking purchase on the unforgiving slope, invariably relinquished their tools to fend off the monstrous bird's attacks. To scale the Shard and survive the Guardian seemed a task beyond mortal capacity. Near the foot of this icy monument lived Torin, a young man whose entire existence had unfolded in its formidable shadow. He absorbed the stories, witnessed the procession of hopefuls return defeated. Like all his peers, winter was the only season he comprehended. While tales of summer held a certain fascination, the longing felt by his elders was alien to him. Yet, Torin possessed an innate love for challenge and a mind unusually keen. His days were consumed by chores, aiding his parents in their struggle against the pervasive scarcity. But his scant leisure was often spent on the village pond, his skates carving graceful arcs as his gaze drifted upward to the glittering, indifferent peak. As manhood approached, a singular ambition took root, to be the one soul capable of reaching the princess, of breaching the impossible height. Though amiable village girls offered uncomplicated affection, a restlessness stirred within him, a yearning for the unknown that lay beyond his snowbound hamlet. Life without the taste of adventure seemed an incomplete existence. He pondered the glistening enigma of the shard, turning the problem over and over until a plan, audacious in its simplicity, crystallized in his thoughts. One evening, seated at the rough-hewn table beside the family hearth, the firelight dancing on his earnest face, he unveiled his intention. He would ascend the shard using his ice skates, their blades biting into the frozen slope, leaving his hands free to confront the fabled avian guardian should it appear. His mother's face creased with worry, picturing broken limbs and frozen demise. His father, equally dubious, questioned how Torin, untested and unworldly, could possibly prevail where seasoned men had faltered. How would mere hands suffice against such a beast? What offering could he, a simple village lad, possibly present to a princess? Torin conceded the gaps in his strategy, but remained unyielding. His resolve was set. The climb would commence at dawn. A mother's whispered anxieties found their way to a neighbor's ear. From neighbor to daughter, daughter to the boy across the lane, the news propagated through the village with the speed of wind-driven snow. By the time Torin stood ready, shouldering his meager provisions, the entire populace had gathered. A silent, watchful congregation drawn by the spectacle of improbable hope. With a small rucksack containing a loaf of bread and a flask of water, his skates lashed together and slung over one shoulder, he ignored the collective gaze, lowered his head, and strode purposefully towards the looming mystery of ice. Their skepticism was a wind he would not let buffet him. Down the path winding towards the mountain's base, he trudged, each deep breath steadying his nerve. The curious throng trailing behind faded from his focus. His plan remained starkly simple: skates for climbing, hands for the bird. The lack of a gift for the princess was a bridge he would cross upon arrival. Beyond that, improvisation would have to suffice. The woods flanking the path lay hushed, every branch burdened with a sparkling mantle of perpetual snow. His boots broke the stillness. Thud, crunch, thud, crunch, a solitary rhythm against the profound silence. It calmed him, inducing a state of focused meditation. And then he was there. Before him reared a sheer, precipitous wall of glistening ice, devoid of any discernible handhold or foothold. He felt the weight of the villagers' eyes watching from the tree line's edge. Dropping his skates, shrugging off the rucksack, he sat upon a frost-covered boulder. Boots were exchanged for skates, the worn leather tucked carefully into the pack. He might need them at the summit. He rose, turned, and confronted the obstacle directly. Securing the rucksack, he took a tentative step, driving the toe pick of one skate blade into the unyielding ice. He shifted his weight, planted the other skate slightly higher. The incline was severe, yet just manageable enough to allow him to lean forward, balancing with palms pressed flat against the frigid, slick surface. Methodically, painstakingly, one foot above the other, the ascent began. Pick, step, hoist. Pick, step, hoist. Torin surrendered to the slow cadence, forcing his gaze forward, refusing to look aside, upward, or most terrifyingly, down. Time lost its conventional measure. Exertion became his only clock. The watching villagers dissolved into a distant hum in his consciousness. Gradually, he sensed a shift, climbing out of the deep shadow clinging to the mountain's base. He reached a height where the pale winter sun struck the ice before him, transforming the ascent into a journey through fractured light. The shard, simultaneously translucent and utterly solid, acted as an infinite array of mirrors, catching and refracting the chilly sunlight in blinding flashes. It glittered not like mere ice, but like a mountain carved from faceted crystal. Higher still he climbed, the reflected brilliance intensifying, becoming almost painful, casting dazzling rays that danced before his eyes. Paradoxically, this luminous spectacle brought no warmth. Instead, the air grew sharper, colder. An insistent, icy breeze whipped around his head and shoulders, its ceaseless whistling a monotonous drone in his ears. How long he had climbed, he couldn't guess. His trance was shattered by a new sound, alien amidst the wind's moan, a distant avian cry carried on the frigid air. Faint at first, it grew steadily nearer. Tilting his face skyward, squinting against the glare, he searched for its source. The infamous guardian, he knew. At first, only the blinding sun met his gaze. Then, abruptly, impossibly large wings blotted out the light. Relief warred with terror. The bird was descending directly towards him. It struck in a maelstrom of white feathers and frigid air, the massive creature buffeting him, its wings beating violently around his head. Digging his skate blades deeper for anchorage, Torin instinctively shielded his face with his arms. He flailed, attempting to swat it away, but the beast held the advantage of height and power. Panic flared, lose balance now, and he would plummet. Another failed adventurer swallowed by the shard. Forcing himself to look up directly into the onslaught, he saw the creature's dark taloned feet hovering just above him. In a surge of desperate instinct, without conscious thought, he shot both hands upward, seizing the powerful black legs, one in each fist. The bird shrieked, a sound of pure outrage. Then it began to rise. Its immense wings beat with renewed vigor, showering Torin and the mountainside with a fine spray of frost. He clung on with every fiber of his being as the bird ascended, wrenching his skates free from their icy perches. He was airborne, rising, up, aloft. Trying to shake the tenacious burden clinging to its legs, the great white eagle poured all its strength into flight, soaring high above the shard, carrying Torin far into the frigid sky. He squeezed his eyes shut initially, then dared to open them. Below, the glistening ice rushed past at dizzying speed. To either side, the snow-locked kingdom unfolded, a miniature landscape of toy houses, skeletal trees, and winding white roads, a world rendered unreal by distance. The panorama was breathtaking, but his skates felt like anchors, and the strain in his arms became an agony. He knew he couldn't hold on much longer. The ascent ceased. They were now skimming across the flat, icy expanse of the summit. Just as his grip threatened to fail entirely, a singular object materialized ahead. A tree, impossibly, luminously golden, standing solitary in the vast white emptiness. It pulsed with brilliant light, its countless small leaves seeming to shimmer with an inner warmth, the only sign of vibrant life in this frozen domain. It offered scant hope of a soft landing, but it was his sole chance. As the eagle swooped low over the golden canopy, Torin released his grip. He landed hard amidst a resonant musical vibration, like the chiming of 1,000 tiny bells. Disoriented, he lay still for a moment, catching his breath, then cautiously pushed himself upright. He found himself inside the largest bird's nest imaginable, woven not of twigs, but seemingly of solidified light and frost, cradled within the golden tree. Gazing up and around at the luminous foliage, he saw nestled in the center a colossal, glittering egg, burnished gold under the pale sun. It was vast, easily large enough to fill his rucksack. Closer inspection revealed it was fused to the nest's base by a thick layer of ice and frost, seemingly anchored there for ages. Crawling closer, Torin ran a tentative hand over the smooth, cool surface. He pushed gently. It was frozen fast. Trying to wrench it free risked shattering the magnificent shell. Yet he desired this prize. It was the only conceivable gift he could offer the princess. Sitting back on his heels, he thought intently. An idea sparked. Reaching into his rucksack, he retrieved his water flask, still faintly tepid from the warmth of his body during the climb. Uncorking it, he carefully poured the lukewarm liquid over the base of the egg where it met the ice. As he'd hoped, the slight warmth was enough. Slowly, painstakingly, the frosty bond yielded, contracting and vanishing, revealing the pure golden shell beneath. The moment he felt it shift, Torin gently rocked the immense treasure. With minimal resistance, it came free, detached from its ancient mooring. His relief was short-lived. The white eagle had not departed. Screaming its fury, it plunged back towards the tree, a streak of white vengeance against the pale sky, clearly intent on reclaiming its golden charge. Casting about desperately, Torin seized the only thing readily available. As the eagle's talons descended towards him once more, he thrust the loaf of bread from his rucksack into their grasp. Mistaking the offering for its intended prize, the bird let out a triumphant squawk and wheeled away, soaring back into the vast, empty sky. Its cries faded into the immense silence. Torin remained still, relief washing over him in a wave. Once certain the eagle was truly gone, he turned back to the egg. Retrieving his boots from the rucksack, he carefully cushioned the golden orb within the pack, securing the flap tightly. He removed his skates, donned his boots again and slung the skates over his shoulder. Leaving the heavy rucksack at his feet for a moment, he stood carefully within the enormous nest, scanning the summit. Initially, only a blinding expanse of white met his gaze. The frost-covered peak seemed utterly barren, reflecting the sun's rays with unrelenting intensity across an endless vista of ice. Shielding his eyes, he peered into the distance, a faint twinkle, brief and bright. He held his breath, watching. It flashed again. Something else existed out here. Castle or mirage, it was the sole feature interrupting the desolate plain. He resolved to reach it. With the precious, heavy egg secured on his back, he carefully navigated his way down through the shimmering golden branches to the icy ground below. Hoisting the rucksack firmly onto his shoulders, he began the trek towards the distant, intermittent gleam. Time dissolved into the rhythm of his steps across the frozen waste. The biting cold numbed his face and fingers. The unceasing glare wearied his eyes. The sun, he noted, was arcing lower, sinking towards the horizon. Mid-afternoon, perhaps. He prayed he would reach the flashing object before nightfall claimed the exposed summit. Shelter was non-existent otherwise. He traversed the ice sheet without further incident, the white eagle remaining absent. As he drew nearer, the object resolved itself, growing larger in the softening, late afternoon light. Soon, doubt evaporated. It was the castle from the village legends. And what a structure it was! Seemingly sculpted from the very essence of winter, its towers and turrets soared skyward in immense, glittering formations. An impossibly tall and delicate fortress of light, mirroring the shifting colors of the heavens. As sunset bled across the sky, the castle walls shimmered with reflected orange, pink, and gold. He reached the forefront and paused before a drawbridge, frozen solid in its lowered position across a moat that was now a river of solid ice, winding like a glassy serpent around the fortress. Picking his way cautiously across the bridge, he stopped before a pair of enormous, intricately frosted doors. Having reached the culmination of his plan, with no further strategy prepared, he did the only thing conceivable. He knocked. The sound echoed within the glass castle, startlingly loud, as if it were the first such intrusion in centuries. He felt the vibration shudder through the structure's core, a sound both vast and brittle. He waited, the silence stretching into an eternity. Then, with excruciating slowness, one of the massive doors began to creak open. Shuddering with the unfamiliar effort, the portal yielded. Pushing with all her might at the base of the towering door stood a young woman. She wore a simple white gown beneath a heavy cloak, topped, incongruously yet sensibly, by a thick fuzzy blue muffler and woolly earmuffs. She stared at Torin, eyes wide with astonishment, opened her mouth as if to speak, hesitated, then took a deep breath. "Who?" she asked, her voice surprisingly firm. "Are you, precisely?" Torin, unsure what he had anticipated, was certainly not prepared for direct interrogation by the princess herself. He stammered his origin, the village below the mountain, and added, feeling suddenly foolish, that he had come, if she was willing, to rescue her. She regarded him dubiously. He became acutely aware of his less than heroic appearance, clutching skates and a rucksack, devoid of sword or armor. Then his face brightened. "I found something," he said, "something special. May I bring it inside?" Curiosity flickered in her eyes. She nodded, stepping aside with a guarded air, gesturing towards the cavernous hall beyond. Torin entered. The cold inside was as profound as it was outside. The earmuffs suddenly seemed entirely reasonable. Before he could present his gift, she straightened. "I am Ilara," she announced. He managed an awkward bow, murmuring his own name. She inclined her head graciously. "So then, Torin, what is it you have brought me?" He swung the rucksack from his shoulder, opened the flap, and slowly, carefully, drew out the immense, glittering golden egg. Ilara's eyes widened at the sight. She took it from his hands with reverence. He recounted his journey, the climb, the eagle, the nest. Hearing his tale, Ilara nodded slowly. She had often seen the great white eagle circling the peak, she explained, and had long suspected it was the sorcerer himself, shape-shifted, the architect of their curse. Her father, she related with sorrow, had departed the castle long ago, seeking the mage, hoping to bargain for their release. He had never returned, and so she remained, suspended in time, unaging, unaware of the years slipping past in the world below. Torin offered words of sympathy, but Ilara seemed captivated by the egg cradled in her arms. Shifting it gently, she exclaimed, "Torin, it grows warm." As they watched, the egg began to glow, suffused with an inner light. Its golden surface, previously static, seemed to ripple and shift. Uneasy, Ilara carefully placed the egg on the center of the vast flagstone floor and stepped back. The egg blazed brighter, bathing the hall in an intense golden radiance. Ilara pulled off her muffler, murmuring about the sudden heat. Torin realized he too felt intensely warm. Instinctively, they retreated further as the very air around them began to shimmer. Water started to drip from the icy architecture. A single drop, then a cascade. The sound of running water filled the hall, a rising chorus. The castle was melting. Without a word exchanged, they flung open the great doors and scrambled outside, back across the rapidly thawing drawbridge. Turning, they witnessed an astonishing spectacle. The ice castle was dissolving from its core outward, a brilliant column of light erupting from its center towards the twilight sky, like a geyser of fire. With a deep, resonant rumble, the central structure collapsed inward, sending waves of water surging into the moat, instantly transforming it back into flowing water. To their utter amazement, a bird of fiery orange and red plumage soared upward from the ruins, pausing to hover, flapping its magnificent wings over the remnants of the ice palace. Each downbeat sent waves of warmth radiating outward. Rivers of meltwater cascading down the mountainside. thawing everything in their path. Torin knew they had to descend immediately. As the great phoenix circled and cried out above them, a sound not of menace but of liberation, he decided to risk everything once more. Dropping his now useless skates, he grasped Alara's arm. "Hold on to me." She obeyed instantly, locking her arms around his neck. As the radiant bird swooped low overhead, he reached up and seized its fiery legs, clinging with the same desperate tenacity he had shown with the frost eagle. Without protest, the phoenix lifted them into the air. The ephemeral ice palace vanished below, collapsing into a surging lake atop the mountain. The triumphant bird banked, soaring across the summit before plunging downward, heading directly for the village nestled far below. The mountainside rushed past, no longer slick ice, but streaming with rivulets of water. The wind in their faces was hot, powerful, carrying the scent of damp earth, long forgotten. They shut their eyes tightly, concentrating only on holding fast. Then, abruptly, their feet brushed the ground. They released the bird and tumbled together in a heap onto the sodden earth in the clearing at the mountain's base. The phoenix wheeled upward, a fantastic glowing ember against the deepening night sky, uttered one final piercing cry, and vanished into the distance. A shower of golden sparks drifted down in its wake, like fading embers from a celestial fire. Torin and Alara lay on the wet, patchy snow, gasping for breath, staring up at the star-dusted sky. After several moments of stunned silence, they turned to face each other, and laughter erupted, incredulous and joyful. They had succeeded. Alara was free. Torin was home. The villagers, having long since abandoned their vigil, had retreated to their hearths and evening meals. No one witnessed Torin's return, trudging through the moonlit slush with an unknown young woman leaning on his arm, the reappearance of their son on their doorstep, sodden but alive, accompanied by a stranger, caused his mother such shock that she dropped the ladle into the stew pot. By morning, the world stood transformed. A warm, steady rain fell across the entire kingdom, washing away the last vestiges of the long winter. Snow and ice vanished as if they had been a dream. The rain ceased by midday, and then, for the first time in living memory, the sun emerged, warm and benevolent. As its gentle rays touched the land, a collective sigh of relief, decades in the making, rose from the village. In the weeks and months that followed, spring unfurled in earnest. Children discovered the vibrant green of new grass, the astonishing palette of wildflowers, the deep blue of unfrozen water. Birds, small and cheerful, filled the air with forgotten melodies. Prosperity, dormant for so long, began to return. And when Torin asked Alara, the princess rescued from winter's grasp, to be his wife, he presented her not with gold or ice, but with a bouquet bursting with flowers of every conceivable color, a vibrant promise gathered from the reborn earth. Through the frost-kissed pane, the world remained wrapped in midnight's cloak, yet Alara surfaced from sleep effortlessly on the morning of December 13th, She slipped from her bed, the feather-stuffed eiderdown smoothed back into place with practiced hands, her bare feet finding solace in woolen slippers lined with soft sheepskin. A deep inhalation drew in the house's warm breath, an aromatic tapestry woven from saffron, sun-dried raisins, rising dough, and the robust scent of percolating coffee. Down the stairs she crept, navigating the familiar silence, bypassing the treacherous step that groaned its secrets, careful not to disturb her grandmother or sister slumbering above. The kitchen glowed. Moore was already a presence there, drawing a tray of glistening lucicater, saffron buns studded jewel-like with raisins, from the oven's heart. Steam bloomed against the window panes, momentarily obscuring the pre-dawn gloom. By the stove stood Far, overseeing the coffee's dark alchemy, his daily ritual before facing the heat and clang of the smithy. In a cradle nestled in the corner, Kyle, Ilara's infant brother, offered soft, contented gurgles. Across the scrubbed wooden table lay a bundle of birch twigs, resting near the Advent wreath, while a paper star gleamed sentinel in the window. Christmas whispered just beyond the horizon. Moore and Far turned, their faces softening into smiles at Ilara's entrance. Today held a special significance for all of Vastiana, indeed all of Sweden. Yet for Ilara, it shimmered with a unique luminescence. This evening, she would embody St. Lucia in the town's cherished parade. More materialized in the kitchen doorway, her own smile echoing the others. She bestowed a gentle tousle upon Ilara's fair hair before gravitating towards the ceramic stove, a bastion of cozy warmth in the corner. Last to descend was Sina, Ilara's younger sister, emerging tousle-haired, clutching her beloved red-painted wooden horse. Her eyes widened, taking in the assembled family, the realization dawning. On St. Lucia's morning, the final riser earned the playful title Lucy the Loose, accompanied by a gentle tap from the birch twigs. A giggle escaped Sina. She was the tardy one today. With a laugh, Moore reached for the bundled twigs. Sina darted around the table, a fleeting chase ending in Moore catching her, tapping her legs lightly with the branches before enveloping her in a warm embrace. Gathered together, the family savored the day's special breakfast. The lucicater were buttery, golden perfection, the delicate spice of saffron pirouetting on Ilara's tongue. She tore a tiny morsel for little Kyle, not yet a year old, experiencing his very first Lucia day. Moore, having witnessed nearly 80 such mornings, often recounted how, on her own 13th Lucia day, she too had led the procession. Sina, her bun finished, voiced the perennial question, why this day for St. Lucia? Ilara, armed with lessons learned, recounted the tale. Lucia, a girl much like herself, lived centuries ago in Siracusa, Sicily, a sun-drenched island cradled by the distant azure Mediterranean. It was an era devoid of streetlights, even oil lamps, electricity an unimaginable dream. In those perilous times for Italian Christians, many sought refuge from persecution within the catacombs, a subterranean labyrinth beneath the city. Safe, yet often hungry and thirsty. Lucia, possessed of a compassionate heart, could not abide their suffering. Filling her apron and pockets with provisions, she ventured nightly into the catacombs' embrace. To keep her hands free for distributing aid, she couldn't carry a light. Instead, atop her head rested a wreath woven from fragrant laurel, into which she fixed 4 candles. Their flickering radiance pierced the oppressive dark, illuminating her path. This, Ilara concluded, was why each December 13th across Scandinavia, Lucia's benevolence was remembered with grand processions, led by a young woman crowned with light. Still, Sina probed deeper. Why December 13th? Why not the bloom of spring or the height of summer? Ilara chuckled. Summer belonged to midsummer revels, picnics under the midnight sun, dances around maypoles adorned with flowers. The question lingered. Why celebrate Lucia in the year's deepest, darkest heart? In bygone days, Mormor explained, her voice soft with remembered winters, these long December days tested the spirit of Sweden. The cold bit fiercely, and lean harvests meant scarcity. Superstition whispered of malevolent spirits roaming the midwinter nights. Light, she emphasized, was the antidote. Light repelled the shadows, offered solace. Even in times of hunger, a night of candlelit song and dance could momentarily banish the gnawing emptiness. Soon, Mormor assured them, the year would pivot. The dark, cold nights would begin their slow retreat. But for now, darkness held Sweden fast. That is why we celebrate the feast of Saint Lucia now. Ilara, Mormor finished, her gaze meeting the girls. You have a vital task tonight, to bring cheer and warmth, to illuminate the darkest hour. First, however, Mor reminded them, came school. Bundled in their warmest layers, Ilara and Sina strapped on heavy snowshoes and stepped into the winter morning. Darkness still reigned, though the sky reluctantly yielded to a pale, bruised gray. The red wooden schoolhouse, a beacon of warmth, was a welcome sight. Inside, a festive energy pulsed. Ilara's classroom blackboard displayed the mundane artifacts of learning, grammatical rules, the geometry of triangles. Yet today, they were mere backdrop. Not even Fru Lindgren, their teacher, paid them mind. The day belonged wholly to preparations for the evening's procession. Every hand was busy crafting costume elements. Ilara began weaving her crown, using pliable branches from the lingonberry bush thriving in the schoolyard. Lucia's wreath was traditionally fashioned from lingonberry, its evergreen resilience a symbol of enduring life, of spring's promise even in winter's depths. As she worked, her fingers grew sticky with sap, the crushed leaves releasing a sharp, verdant perfume, evoking thoughts of coming spring, of newborn lambs and blossoming forget-me-nots. Around her, classmates focused intently. Girls painted candle holders, destined to walk behind their Lucia, clad like her in white, but carrying single flames. Boys diligently affixed paper stars to slender poles, transforming into star boys, complete with tall, star-emblazoned paper hats. Younger children darted about, already costumed as Tomtenisar, Santa's elves, sporting pointed red hats and ears. Midday brought a fleeting solar appearance, a pale, silvery disk veiled by clouds, its light thin, offering scant warmth despite making the thick snowdrifts glitter. By school's end, however, the sun had already dipped low. Darkness had reclaimed the village by the time Ilara and Sina reached their cottage, but its kitchen windows spilled warm, inviting light. Moore, amidst a cloud of flour, had been baking tirelessly. To honor the sustenance Lucia carried, tradition dictated a feast of comforting treats. The sisters arrived just as extra hands were needed to roll out dough for pepperkakor, the crisp, spiced gingerbread biscuits enjoyed post-procession. Moore handed Ilara a rolling pin. Together, they coaxed the fragrant dough into a thin, even sheet spanning the table. Sina's turn came next. Entrusted with a star-shaped cutter, she furrowed her brow in concentration, meticulously cutting cookie after cookie, arranging them on a baking tray. With the pepperkakor baking, Sina stirred meatballs simmering in creamy gravy. Ilara and Moore, meanwhile, tackled the vetekrans. The dough, having risen patiently in a warm corner, was gently stretched into a delicate sheet. Methodically, they brushed it with butter, dusted it with sugar, and sprinkled aromatic cinnamon and cardamom. Rolling it carefully, they joined the ends into a ring. Moore's sharp knife made neat slices, twisting the pastry outward to resemble an ornate crown. The ginger snaps emerged, fragrant and perfect, replaced in the oven by the pastry ring. Ilara blew on a warm snap, nibbling its buttery, crumbly edge. Outside, the sky deepened into velvet black. Stars emerged, silver pinpricks scattered across night's heavy fabric. The wall clock showed 6:30. It was time. Baby Kale was swaddled warmly in wool and sheepskin. Sina donned her best coat, her pointed elf hat held ready. Ilara splashed cool water on her face, scrubbed behind her ears, and brushed her hair until it shone like spun gold. Reverently, she slipped into the pristine white gown Moore had sewn over weeks, a garment more beautiful than any she'd worn. Tiny pearl buttons marched down the front. White on white embroidery of leaves and flowers adorned the hem and sleeves. Moore helped tie a crimson sash around her waist. The procession commenced at the schoolhouse, destined to meander through narrow, cobbled streets to the town hall. The classroom buzzed, children adjusting pointed ears and starry hats. The girls from Ilara's class stood robed in white, but only Ilara wore the distinguishing red sash. The lively chatter subsided into a profound hush as the clock struck 7. Fru Lindgren raised a hand. The moment was upon them. Ilara's stomach fluttered, a blend of exhilaration at the honor and trepidation. Would her head stay steady beneath the wreath? Would she falter on the icy cobbles? Would the words of the special song desert her? Silently, she rehearsed. Natten går tunga fjät, rund gård och stuva. Kring jord som sol förlät, skuggorna ruva. Då i vårt mörka hus stiger med tända ljus, Sankta Lucia, Sankta Lucia. Now night walks grand, yet silent, around yard and cottage. Around earth the sun abandoned, shadows linger, Then in our dark house rises with lit candles, Saint Lucia, Saint Lucia. Fru Lindgren secured the lingonberry wreath in Ilara's hair. It felt substantial, yet manageable. A few strategically placed pins ensured it remained steady as Ilara tested it, turning her head. With the strike of a match, Fru Lindgren ignited the candles. The other children fell into place behind her, quiet as snowfall. Ilara smiled, stepped through the school door, and led the procession across the yard into the streets of Vastiana. At the school gate, she allowed herself a swift glance back. She saw the dark silhouette of the school against the forested hills beyond the village edge, the garden blanketed deep in snow. Behind her flowed her classmates, ethereal in white, illuminated by the golden halos of their candles. A smile touched her lips again as she pushed open the gate and descended into the town. Both sides of the street thronged with villagers. Faces were indistinct in the dimness, but their combined voices rose in song. The clear sopranos of the women, the resonant baritones of the men, the thinner tones of children too small to march. Ilara focused on her pace, steady and deliberate, neither too fast to curtail the magic, nor too slow to impede its flow. Walking, she thought of Mormor treading the same path decades earlier. She pictured Vastiana in older times, the profound darkness of winter nights before ubiquitous lamps, the preciousness this candlelit ritual must have held. Her thoughts drifted to young Lucia in Siracusa, bravely lighting her way through subterranean gloom. As the town hall loomed into view, the repertoire of traditional carols concluded. Only the Lucia song remained. Ilara sang it now, her voice clear and true, rising into the night air, echoing over rooftops and towards distant hills. With the uplifting melody and the myriad twinkling lights, she realized the night felt less dark, less daunting after all. The procession concluded. The town hall doors swung wide. Ilara entered, cheeks and fingertips flushed pink from the cold. Inside, long tables groaned under the weight of the feast. Buns, biscuits, pastries, smoked fish, new potatoes, cardamom-laced coffee, and steaming vats of glögg. Mulled wine simmered with spices, raisins, and almonds. Too young for the wine, Ilara warmed herself with spiced apple cider and a slice of Moore's Vitakranz. Everyone sought her out. The mayor, neighbors, teachers, the women from Moore's sewing circle, Farr's colleagues from the smithy. Each offered praise, declaring her a wonderful Lucia. When appetites were sated, tables vanished, making way for the band. To the lively strains of fiddle and accordion, villagers spun through waltzes and polkas. Ilara danced too, once a round with Farr, twice with her cousin Eric, and a gleeful, spinning waltz with Sina. The adults continued, but weariness began to claim Ilara. Finding an empty chair, she curled up, watching. Older couples moving in comfortable silence, younger pairs exchanging shy smiles. Farr tapped his foot to the rhythm. More gently rocked baby Cowl, asleep in her shawl. Some villagers, honoring tradition, would keep vigil all night, dancing, singing, eating, sharing stories until dawn broke. But not Ilara. At midnight, unable to stifle her yawns, more and far guided her home. Changed into a fresh nightgown, she burrowed into bed. The house settled around her, Sina shifting beside her, more tucking Kale into his cradle, more and far murmuring softly downstairs. Gradually, the sounds faded into stillness. Sleep claimed the household. Ilara, though tired, resisted sleep's final pull. She wanted to linger in the warmth, replaying the evening's enchantment, the snow-dusted streets, the echoing carols, the fragrant bounty of the town hall, the collective radiance of hundreds of candles defying the winter dark. The year's longest nights were upon them, yet soon, incrementally, the darkness would yield. The days would lengthen, the sun linger a moment more each visit. Snow would melt, spring would unfurl, leading eventually to summer's languid embrace. Ilara lay back against her pillow, thoughts filled with warmth and light, and drifted into dreams.